introduction is needed here.
Oh, no introduction is needed.
Just make sure that you move your chairs around if you want them to just, you can see Jyotish and Devi and make it feel cozy.
Or not. I mean, you can move in such a way that we're blocked. That works too.
Whatever you want.
We already know we can't sit in the back.
Yeah, right. That's true.
You could turn your chair around. So we did 2 of these little kind of group chats yesterday, and they're really fun. And people asked wonderful questions, so don't be shy. I know I'm a Jyoti, you tend to be shy, but no need. Then we'll just share a few little introductory thoughts, and then do you have, Saganesh, you have a mic?
James does.
Oh, James does, okay. Very good. So if you want to ask a question, then James will bring the mic over. You can take your mask down when you're asking a question, and big thrill, and hold the mic close to your mouth, otherwise it doesn't pick it up. And then it's recorded for all posterity. But just relax, it's all right. No pressure, right? Okay.
You will be graded at the end of the session. Let's start with a prayer and just a very brief meditation. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, we humbly bow to you all. Bless us with complete self-offering of everything that's holding us back. Release us from our delusions so that we might realize that we are one with Thee and one with all that exists. Om. Peace. Amen. I joked yesterday that I often end with Om Shanti, 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 but I don't dare down here because she's so observant that she'll probably run up and refill our water glasses if I did that.
Oh, one last little snowbird coming in. Well, this is just a nice way to spend time together. This was Shanti's idea, and it's proved to be very, very, I think, enjoyable and inspiring for everybody, for us as well. You know, Swami did a lot of question and answer sessions, and it's different from just giving a lecture, because when you're giving a lecture, it has to be, have some forethought, many of you teach, and but with questions and answers, it's more fun because there's a spontaneity, and we feel it, and I hope it's transferred. But anyway, we're just happy to be with all of you, and it's nice to begin returning somewhat to normalcy, and there is life, and I think it's going to be even a better life after COVID, and this is the beginning of those barriers starting to come down. So
I don't really have much to say. I didn't prepare a meal before coming over, so we take orders though. So,
but no takeout.
Yeah, no takeout. So, if anyone has a question, okay.
Oh, there we go. Sorry. A number of years ago, I remember, Jyotish, you mentioning that you and Devi had been serving a lot. I mean, you are still serving a lot. But Devi had said to you, this is about relationship, partnership. And Devi had said to you, we need to spend more time together. And you were sharing this in a class and just kind of saying your first response was, we spend all our time together. But then you thought about it and reflected on it, and what I remember you saying is that, oh, you're right, you know, for our partnership, we need to carve out time that isn't just serving together, which is wonderful. I've drawn upon that a lot over the years, and what I notice with James and I is, you know, it kind of falls away, and then there's we need to spend time together, even though we're together all the time serving, which is a blessing. And I just wondered if it's still something you feel like you need to tend to, or are maybe not, I don't know, or are there other ways that you nourish your partnership in your relationship?
Very nice question, Devi.
Yeah, no, you do need to tend to it. Everything, including a relationship, is like a flower. And if you don't tend to a flower, it doesn't flourish. And so everything in life is like that. But you can't just, I don't know, substitute being together for paying attention to each other. For instance, Devi and I are one of the few couples at Ananda, and one of the few couples that I know who basically are together all the time. We serve together, we teach together, we travel together. Very rarely does either of us go more than a few hours somewhere alone. And so in that sense, we're together a lot of the time. But most of the time when we're together, as right now, our energy flow, our concentration is on all of you. It's not on each other. And of course there's a little, I don't know, residual magnetism that, you know, there's an exchange and a kind of a hidden repartee. You know, we'll say little code words, and or one of us will throw a hot potato at the other, you know, that kind of thing, which is a relationship exchange. But it's secondary, and you need to have time when the relationship is primary and other things are secondary. And you know, there's no formula, you just need to pay attention. There's no formula for what couples should do, nor is there a formula for a couple, because it varies. It may but you just have to be aware of the energy flow and make sure that that energy flow is nurtured in such a way that the energy flow is strong and positive. And if you don't, then you spend much more time trying to repair the, the lack of attention than you do spending some quality time doing things together.
Yeah, once, I don't know, maybe 10 years into the community, Swamiji said to a group of residents there, however much time you spend, and this was a pretty dramatic statement, however much time you spend serving, you should spend twice that much time with your family. So, but I think it's not carved in stone. It was kind of a course correction, because people were, okay, we're devotees and we're married, but we're really trying to be outward and serving. And, literally, there aren't that many hours in the day to spend twice that amount of time that you do serving with your family. But he was just trying to say that's also your path to God. With your children, with your partner, with your spouse, whatever it may be. Or good friends, Friendships are very vitally important. Not very vitally. Friendships are vitally important. And, but and then, so that's kind of the principle. But it changes over time. We're coming up to our, I had to count it out because I couldn't really imagine it had been that long, our 47th wedding anniversary. And God, where did the time go? But, personally speaking, because you asked that question, does it change? Yeah, it does change. But I really don't want to give the impression it becomes more distant. It becomes closer. And closer yesterday when we were signing books, I know Jyoti was there and she caught something which was interesting. We were passing back and forth. She said, wow, you guys are really coordinated. There's a dance here. Well, your thoughts start to intertwine. And it's the sense of separation of one to the other begins to dissolve. You keep your individuality, but you realize that you're parts of a whole. And so it does change over time, and it becomes deeper and more fulfilling and more fun. But it won't be. I also have seen couples that have gone the other way. Oh, thank you. That Ananda devotee couples, that you can feel there are barriers or distances between them because they haven't taken the time. I think Jyotish and I took the time at a certain phase, and now we don't need to that much because there's just always a feeling of connectedness in God. And that's that line in the last line in the wedding vows, and through our perfect love to find the perfect love of God. And that should be the goal.
Where people make relatively serious error is that they split up activities into categories. And especially if you say this is service and this isn't service, this is sacred and this is not sacred. It's just a flow. Everything is God. And it's just a flow. And whether you're cooking or whether you're teaching a class, it simply doesn't matter. Everything is just a kind of a flow so that you do what's in front of you to be done. And it's really the attitude with which you do that, and doing it with concentration and joy and happiness, and good to have humor in it. Devi and I, this is probably politically incorrect, but that's just the way it is anyway. So I was washing dishes. She cooks, I eat. I wash dishes, she cooks, I eat. We both eat. I wash, that's the routine. So I was washing dishes. And
I didn't know what he was going to say. Now I know.
It occurred to me that people kind of judge themselves against some standard. You look in the magazine, and so your body image is some photoshopped model who's 1 out of a million, and that's, I don't look like that, And so the standards we set, by and large, are too high, and we always fail. So I decided to go exactly the other way. Set a standard where I could succeed all the time. And so my standard, as I was washing dishes, I said, Devi, I'm way above normal. The typical Taliban husband does not do the dishes. And so my standard for being a husband is the Taliban husband, which we now call TH.
Yeah, TH. Like we'll see somebody who's really self-centered, fish, good TH, good TH.
Yeah. But you need, it's a joke and it isn't a joke, You just need to go through life with a sense of humor and joy. And basically, honestly, it comes down to this. Happiness comes from not thinking about yourself. And but that doesn't mean, coming back to your question, that you don't need, in that not thinking about yourself, to think about what the activities that you do for a partnership and for each individual's happiness. So.
And one final statement, and then we'll move on to a different topic. If you're feeling in a relationship that you're not getting enough energy, flip the coin, say, I need to give more energy. And don't worry about what you get. Just, I'm going to give more energy. And whatever comes back, comes back. Okay.
Don't tell us we've worn you out already.
Yeah, remember, if you ask the question, you get to pull your mask down, so that's an incentive.
So I've heard a number of people say that being in the presence of Swami Kriyananda was like being with their best friend. And so many people apparently felt that way. Maybe everybody felt that way being with him. So I've just been contemplating that, and what a gift that is, to be able to give people that kind of love. I mean, even someone that he would have just met, for the first time, who would have come away feeling that depth of true love. And maybe they never forget it their whole lives. I think that's an amazing gift that, we probably all have the potential to give. And I wonder, I'm sure that came from a place of just his incredible consciousness. What is it that we can do to cultivate that kind of loving presence for everyone that we're with, everyone in our midst?
That's a very nice question, Kamala Devi. What can we do to cultivate it? Just keep practicing it. That's really the only thing. We were with Swami one time. Oddly enough, he had been buying, I think, a shirt or some talcum powder or something like that in Nordstrom's, in a mall in Sacramento. And as we came out in a completely worldly setting, one might say, I mean, what's worldly and what isn't? You know, it really isn't the setting. But it was not like a place that you would typically be delivering a kind of a spiritual lesson. Anyway, he just stopped and he said, you know, I received a letter yesterday from someone who was saying, I feel so inadequate. You've done so many things, Swami, and I've done so little, and you've accomplished so much, and I've hardly accomplished anything, and I just feel inadequate. And Swami said, I wish people would not do that. He said, I wish people would understand we're all the same. I've just been at it a little bit longer. And that's been such a, I don't know, a kind of a, there are certain statements, certain key, I don't know, like key concepts that get applied everywhere. But with this, how do you develop more of a sense of kindness and friendship and love? You just keep at it, and you keep trying to do that consciously as well as you can. You do it in meditation, you do it in relationships, you do it in interactions. And if you just keep, whatever you practice, whatever you give energy to will grow. And so you just, if that's a goal, to have more of that kind of sense of love and friendship and kindness, then keep giving energy to that. And it grows. And I know from my own life I'm much kinder now and more loving to people than I was when I was young.
Much more than when you were a Taliban husband.
Yeah, even more, yeah. When I was an actual Taliban husband, I hardly had any of that quality. But anyway, you just, whatever you want to grow, give energy to it. And that includes primarily our love for God and our attunement, because if you want to be like Swami, be like Swami, and have that desire to be like Swami, and that desire attunes you to his consciousness or his magnetism, and the same with Master. If you want to be a Master, try to attune to Master in your heart, and you're opening up to that means that his magnetism has a chance, because he won't do it against your will. If you open your will, align with the Master, or with Swami in this case, then their magnetism can come in, and that changes you on a cellular level that you don't even realize. So you just keep at it and do the best you can.
But it's also important to try to understand more deeply what was the quality of that divine friendship that Swami gave, because it's different from human friendship. I remember once he was in Assisi at the time we were living in America, and we hadn't seen him for quite a long time, and I was really missing him on a personal level, because I tend to be more that way. And so we got over to Assisi, and he was busy. He was writing, and there were a lot of things going on, and I wasn't getting the kind of personal energy I had expected or wanted. And I started kind of getting a little, I don't know, moody or something, sad. And he was playing with me, because I remember very clearly he was coming in to give a satsang at the Assisi temple. And there's a long walkway for those of you who haven't ever been there. And all the members of the community were all lined up along the walkway. And we were throwing rose petals at Swami as he went into the temple. And honestly, when I threw my rose petals, he went like that. Like, I don't want your rose petals. And so then later, a day or two later, he said to me, Devi, Nobody's special to me. I'm not even special to myself. And that was a good lesson for me. What's that friendship based on? And because I tend to be more personal, and I realize the higher octave of divine friendship, it's still caring and compassionate and loving and supportive, but there's always an impersonal quality. It's not, just as we were telling that story about the woman who was caring for the COVID patients, and she just felt like she was watching it. It wasn't her caring for them. And so try to cultivate a little bit, even as you're caring for people, it's not you. It's not you and it's not them. It's just that flow of energy and blessings. And that's a path to God. It really is. You know, just to perfect that kind of divine friendship. That's why Swami signed his letters in divine friendship. It's worth really trying to go deep with what that means. Because it isn't just being real nice to everybody, you know. It's feeling that your own deepest center and relating to that from other people, from that towards other people. So
It's just a kind of a gradual progression, you know. As Ananda Ma said, that people seek things in the world because they're hungry, that the true food for the mind or the soul is joy. But if they don't feel that, then they seek a lesser form of joy. And so she told her disciples, don't correct people if they're seeking this or seeking that. They're doing that because they don't know how to feed themselves any other way. Try to help feed them, try to help. But gradually as we progress, those areas of hunger in ourselves begin to get satiated. And where we might for a while have always needed somebody to recognize when we did something. We were needy for that recognition. So maybe there was a hunger of, I don't know, self-confidence, self-respect, whatever, however, would vary from person to person. So that need to be recognized for what we do, gradually that gets filled up until it becomes, I don't know, a little bit embarrassing to be recognized for doing something. It's like you tie your shoe and somebody says, oh, how wonderful you tied your, you know, it's more that kind of a mindset. But you just, you don't get full by not eating or by suppressing. Just do the best you can. But I guess the point I'm really trying to make is if the attempt is sincere in trying to not be self-referenced, but to be other-referenced, and especially to be God-referenced, then that's what fills up those areas of hunger that cause the aberrations in our behavior. And on Devi's behalf, very, very rarely did Swami correct her in something like this. You know, it's not like this was a huge flaw that Swami was constantly working with her on. She remembers it because it was such an aberration. Swami didn't feel like she was a needy person who
in
constantly...
fact, most of the time we were with him, he never talked.
Yeah, we would... Yeah, people often say, oh, you spent so much time with Swami. He must have been constantly giving you counsel. And most of the time when we were like driving him, there would be 3 hours where not a word was said. He'd be listening to his music, or he might be reading a book. And he felt relaxed enough in our presence so that he didn't need to pay attention to us all the time. And much of the time when we were driving him or with him, he just needed, because he was constantly giving to other people, he just needed to have space to kind of relax back into himself, whether it was reading a little P.G. Wodehouse or listening to music, just that space to relax back. But there wasn't this constant exchange, and I think that's why he had us drive him.
Because we didn't demand any energy.
We didn't demand attention, and he didn't feel the need to. But when he felt that we needed something, he was not at all reticent in either giving us a positive feedback or, in this case, kind of a corrective. But it would be a mistake to think, oh, Swami was constantly watching our behavior and tweaking this and adjusting that. He was very centered in himself.
And one of the nicest things he ever said to us was, there was a period in 2009, late 2009, early 2010, when he was down in Los Angeles and trying to get Ananda established there. And we were all living in the home of he and his staff, and Jyotish and I, who he had invited down. We're all, for 9 months, we were living in this very big house that belonged to a devotee, a dear, dear friend of ours, Bharvi Kaz. And, you know, we would have most meals with him, and, you know, we tried to, you know, keep energy up, and sometimes we'd try to think of a funny story or a joke or something like that, but just to give him energy. And then when that period of time was over, I said to him, Swamiji, I hope we didn't intrude in your, you know, in the space you wanted around you. We were just trying to bring energy to any situation. And he paused and he said, no, you two wear well. I thought, okay, that's a nice thing to say.
You know, we have a tendency to ramble. So if you have a question, everybody who has a question, raise your hands, and that way we can judge a little bit how long we should ramble or not.
Last night, just before...
Hold the mic up close.
Last night, just before I went to sleep, I thought, I should really read what you wrote. I know I said to Chidambaranamara, but I picked up the book and I looked at it, and thank you for that. And I opened it to, maybe it was this morning, but I opened it to Jyotish's chapter, Jyotish's writing on creativity. And, you know, that's a bigger energy in my life right now. But I'm still not clear about it, because it's like everything. It's a razor's edge with the ego and a more of a divine expression. I do my best to, you know, tune into a quality and to bring light. Light is the kind of the biggest energy coming to me, coming through me. And I just want thoughts or suggestions. I'm mostly doing it because it's an enjoyable experience, and it's a way of actually getting out of thinking about myself, because I'm in a flow that's light and shape, and so I'm not really sure what, it's not like I need to know my whole direction, but I'm not feeling clear about, I took the transformative arts program, and I really don't feel clear about that, although I see it as, it's all transformative for me, just painting. So I think I would like to help people just feel more natural at spending time being creative. And I just wondered if you had any other thoughts.
Yeah, creativity is an interesting thing. First of all, it's not always easy to do, but try not to feel that creativity has a performance standard to it. You do it because you enjoy doing it. And it's like You know, a competitive runner is constantly looking at his watch and watching his pace and training, and a walker is out walking and enjoying the scenery, and the trees are nice and they're walking along. Creativity should be more like walking than like running, unless you're trying to be a professional artist that is making your living by doing something. Then you have to get into that professional mindset. But otherwise, for the vast majority of us, creativity should just be doing something that you enjoy doing for the sake of doing it. And you aren't looking at very much the final product, although obviously as a painter or as an artist, there ends up being a final product. So do whatever you're doing primarily for the joy of doing it, not for any other reason. Having said that, creativity is important for everybody, you know, and here you and I share being artists or painters or that kind of a thing. But Devi's area of creativity is primarily cooking, I would say. And she's a wonderful creative cook. But there are so many things to be creative about that we should just enjoy it. But you touched on one more thing. And this is important, is that most people tend to over-specialize with one aspect. Winston Churchill became a painter late in his life, like when he was 55 or 60. And he said, people in my position that are, you know, he was the head of England, and constantly having to make decisions, he said, I have friends and they try to relax by playing chess, which is constantly about making more decisions upon making decisions. And he said, that's going the wrong way. It's like part of your brain is overused, so you relax by using that part of your brain even more. He said, I found painting to be an enormous gift to me, because I don't need to I don't need to use that part of my brain that's overused. I get to use a completely different part. So it's nice to have a kind of a hobby or a creative area that is different from what your regular work is. And there are several artists in the room. So, you know, Bhajan is an artist, and you're an artist, and you're an artist, and these are just kind of
Jewelry,
visual arts.
yeah, jewelry.
Yeah. And there are, everybody in the room is creative in some way or another. But the point here being, it's nice to have an area of creativity that doesn't use something that's already overused in you. And when I started painting, Swami was very encouraging to me. He said, that's very good. You're too logical, and this will help you develop more intuition.
One thing I picked up, and maybe I misperceived in your question, Amara, is, do I have permission to do creative, fun things? Is that part of life as a devotee? And, you know, we have to be able to say, the more you walk the path, at first it's like, okay, these are the techniques, these are the attitudes, we'll read these books, and that's a phase we all have to go through. But then you have to make it your own. You have to make meditation your own. You have to go, you know, how is this working for me? Not that you change the techniques, but you need to just make the experience personal. And that's why the arts are such a wonderful vehicle for even deepening meditation, because you have to come from a calm, centered, intuitive place within yourself. And then that can enhance your meditation. But, you know, Swamiji said that Master was so, his mind was so fluid. I mean, this, I've pondered over this, it seems impossible. But Swamiji said that Master never even tied his shoelaces the same way twice. I mean, you know, for most of it, we don't even think about it, or we just slip our feet into our shoes. But that level of fluidity of consciousness, you know, that's what a master is. They're not bound by, this is how we always do it. And we were talking with Asha this morning at breakfast about how Swami said contradictory things about the same question, depending on the people he was talking to and the circumstances. And so, and he was intuitively responding to the needs in that moment. And so creativity is very important if we don't think of it in, you know, as dance or painting or jewelry making, but as a approach to life, where you're just saying, how can I see the world always in a fresh way? How can I teach this yoga class in a way that's fun for me instead of, okay, this is the, you know, the series of postures we do, but, and as a teacher too of anything, whether it's hatha yoga or meditation, to always keep it fresh and to keep your life fresh. And Jyotish is always getting new books about how I can refine my drawing, sketching technique more, and I'm always getting new cookbooks. Oh, look at, there's a whole new way to do this. And it's just, behind it all is the desire to keep from kind of settling into ruts and see the possibilities, the endless possibilities of each day and each moment and our relationships. And that's where joy comes. And I know Tricia works with special needs children, and I mean, that must be such a creative thing, because there's no, I mean, I'm sure you had all the professional training you can get, but every child's needs are different, special needs, and you have to just, how do I reach this child? I mean, it must be a beautiful process and so rewarding. So it's, anyway, it's really an approach to life. And when we dance, I used to be a dancer. When I was in second grade, I don't know, I came home one day and I said, Mommy, I want to take dance lessons. And so I was in a dance class from second grade till I graduated college. In the summers I would go to dance classes. And then I came to Ananda and I said, I think that's over. There's no way I can continue that here. But it wasn't about the dance. It was about the freedom and the joy. And so. And
just, I want to set the record straight. If you hear her claim that I've never danced with her, that's a dastardly lie. I did dance with her at a wedding reception one time.
No, so yes, someone came up last night when we were signing books, and they had Jyotish's 30-day essentials for marriage, and I don't often say this, that's what he's referring to it, but every single one of those 30 different suggestions he does, except he said you should dance with your partner. I said, we never danced together. And he's like, we did that one time, remember? And I said, Jyotish, that wasn't really dancing.
Which is why it was only one time.
I have a bit of a follow-up question to that.
Okay. Sorry. Voice of God just came up there.
A bit of a follow-up question, something that I think about, there's some irony which you might feel in this question. In terms of the creativity, one of the things that I put a focus on is to try to be more in solution consciousness than the problem consciousness, which, you know, the way I grew up and thinking and so on. Do you find that creativity helps be in that solution consciousness rather than problem consciousness?
That's a great question. Absolutely, I do. And I'll tell you, this is, maybe artists will understand this a little bit more. But I started out working with watercolor and with kind of acrylic colors, the liquid acrylic colors. That was the very first painting that I did with that. And I found out that as I began that process, that it just did not suit what I was trying to do, because if you have a piece of watercolor paper and you want at the end, let's say you want a swan to be white on a blue lake, you have to plan ahead, you have to know the shape of the swan, and you take a kind of a rubber cement called a masking fluid, and you mask out the shape of that swan, because if you paint over it, it gets colored and you can't completely undo that color. So with that kind of painting, you have to plan the end of the painting. You have to know where you're going before you go there. And I started out that way, and it was exactly the opposite of what I was trying to do, which I was trying to get away from being too logical. And so I've quit, and I paint primarily now in oils, although I will also paint in acrylic, but I find oils suit my style better, my flow better. But with that, I will sometimes paint over something 2 or 3 or 4 times, or I'll add something in at the end. Many of you have seen the painting with Master and Swami. It's called Divine Friendship. Master and Swami standing on a beach holding hands and looking out, and there's a wave in the background. Well, I painted that without Master and Swami in it. And it was just a beach scene with a wave. And then, because I was interested in trying to get the fluidity of the wave, and then I looked at it and I said, this needs something, and then the thought came in. Well, if that had been a watercolor thing, I could never have made that shift. So the flow and the creativity and the intuitive aspect of painting is, for me, because that's what I need to develop, that more fluid thing. So that solution consciousness as opposed to problem consciousness, for me, watercolor painting would be problem consciousness. Here's the problem, how do I fix this, how do I, and it would be too much of that. This is just, I need another solution here, and bingo bango, you can just paint over it.
But it, particularly in people who are in leadership roles, whether in Ananda or in the business world, solution consciousness is just vital. And, and it can be, okay, let's say a new staff person is needed. Somebody has been running a department or an area, and they need to leave. But if you approach, we do this all the time. If you approach like, oh God, it's a problem, how are we gonna find somebody? But if you just say, there's a solution, and then like the most amazing things happen. We were just, we're reopening the Expanding Light now, and it had been shut down for 1.5 years, and most of the staff has been reemployed elsewhere. So when we're reopening it, like, we don't have anybody to run the place, And so we kind of filled in most of the positions, but we didn't have anybody to run the kitchen. And guests were starting to come. And then Anandi Cornell, most of you know her, she just called me the day we were coming down here, and she said, the most amazing thing happened. This woman that used to run the kitchen, she's a devotee, she lives in Nevada City, and she opened up her own restaurant in town. She was a trained cordon bleu cook. And with COVID, the restaurant didn't make it. She just called Anandi and said, I'd really like to work in the kitchen again. Are there any openings? And it was like, okay, yeah, there are. So anyway, it's so important to, when questions arise in life, we can look at through one end of the telescope where it's like dark and little, or we can look at the other end where it gets bigger and bigger. And so just to draw the answers that you need with positive solution consciousness. And Swami, like we were listening to a talk on the way down. I must have been there, but I don't remember him talking about how he created the Festival of Light and how it just, like the little bird story, he said, it came from nowhere. It just kind of, all of a sudden he started writing it, and there it was.
He said, what's this little bird doing here?
Anyway, it's a fun way to live, and it's creativity, it's positive thinking, it's solution consciousness, and it's totally life transforming. It makes a huge difference.
And because you guys both, and many of you in the room, work with others, try as much as possible not to criticize and not to look at people's deficits. Look at their strengths and build on their strengths, because that's solution orientation. If you start looking at the deficits and criticizing, not only do you begin to diminish their potential, but you put out a kind of an aura that suppresses them from rising to their potential. I one time was playing doubles in racquetball, and in doubles you have a partner, and I was a fairly decent mid-level player, and I was, we were playing another pair, and my partner kept flubbing all the time. And every time, finally it started annoying me. And every time the ball came his direction, I would think, oh God, he's going to flub it again. And sure enough, he did. And then about halfway through the match, I realized what I was doing. And I was able to flip that around. And honest to God, he started to hit every shot correctly. And so, it was such a dramatic example of a basic teaching that we all know, that we create a world that conforms to our expectations. And so if we're constantly creating a world filled with problems, boy, you're going to get it. You're going to have a world that looks like that. And if we can just flip that, and in this case, because we're talking about people, see the good side of them, their potential, their energy, find something that will boost them, and it works like magic.
And interestingly, the partner that improved his game that Jyotish was playing with, he was the same guy who wrote Swami the letter saying, "Oh, you've done so much, and I can't, I'm so discouraged because I can't do what you do." But there was one, and Swami was so affirmative, particularly when people were having a hard time. And there was one, it was a fundraiser dinner, and he was praising someone who worked, at that time was working with the publishing, with Crystal Clarity, and he was really, really praising this person and praising this person. And Dr. Peter, who's really becoming a saint before our eyes through his service as a physician and through the little clinic he runs, but he was sitting next to me, but he's very dispassionate. And so Swami was praising this other person and praising. And Peter said very quietly, "I knew that guy was having a hard time, but I didn't know it was that bad."
Yeah, that he was so needy that Swami had to keep giving him strokes. We visited a college in India that had a beautiful practice. The head of the college, the dean, was a devotee of another line, but a very, very beautiful soul. He had a practice, he could feel the mood of the students. And when there was kind of a down energy, he would call all of the students, there were about 200 students in this It was a kind of
Small business school?
Yeah, small business, I think mainly MBA business school in India. He would call the students in, and he would pick especially the ones who he could feel were having the hardest time. And they would come in front of the class, and every student would stand up and say 3 good things about that person. And at the end of that time, of course, the person being praised felt buoyed up, but everybody, because of that flow of positive energy, it would change the entire mood of the school. And he said, I need to do that every couple of weeks or so. I just feel, there's no rhyme or reason to it, I just feel when it would be helpful. But it's a good practice for us where there's problem consciousness or especially criticism of people. Try to think of 3 good things to say first.
So we probably have time for one more question.
Standard question. How's the ego transcendence going?
How is Leo Transcendent going?
Working on it. It's a canvas that we're not quite finished with.
Okay, one more? Oh, good. I was thinking David had a question. You can take your mask down.
I have the same beard as James. So
Hold it close to your mouth.
I've been fascinated with the fundamental nature of consciousness. And I know we don't have enough time to really delve into this. We've been hearing about how to expand our consciousness. I don't even know where it is. And, the universe is a manifestation of intelligent energy. So I know all my cells are conscious and my atoms are conscious, but I don't know where I'm conscious. So I'm trying to figure out how to expand what I don't even have a handle on. And it's more than just my awareness of me and my situation and all of my surroundings. It's how do I locate and elevate that divine part in me?
You know, there is a great spiritual teacher in India, Ramana Maharshi, and his main technique that he taught was just the meditation technique of who am I? Who am I? And he just would have his students, his disciples, repeat that. Because by asking that over and over and over and taking it deeper and deeper, they found who they were. And so essentially, consciousness is our sense of self. And that when you say you expand, what does it mean to expand it? We move from the self that's defined by personality and ego and predilections and likes and dislikes, to expand it to let it grow to our own higher nature, which is being able, I'm pointing to Kamala Devi, which feels a universal love for everyone, which feels that you are a part of all that is. So consciousness is our sense of self-awareness, and it starts with, we can't help it, with a limited sense of self-awareness, and then we expand it through meditation, through service, through everything we've been talking about, creativity, solution consciousness, divine friendship, all of these things. And through that bit by bit, we expand our awareness of who we are. And the children at the school at Ananda Village, one of the teachers would have them play this game called Little Self, Big Self. And if they were being selfish, didn't want to share their crayons or push somebody off the swing or whatever it would be, the other kids would say, little self, and if they would share their crayons or let other people get to the swing before they did, the kids would give each other feedback, big self, and we were at a graduation ceremony, and there was a little boy who's first grader, and he said to his teacher, Toby, I don't even remember my little self anymore. And so it's self-awareness, and we expand it by identifying more and more with a greater reality of which we are already a part. I don't know if that's helpful or not, because it's a very deep and subtle question.
Intellectually, I get it, but I'm trying to figure out where to aim my efforts.
I think if I'm intuitively understanding, you're trying to localize the unlocalizable. So consciousness, it would be better to think of consciousness like being atomic energy. And it's everywhere. Everywhere there is an electron, there's consciousness. Everywhere there's a quark or subatomic particle, there's consciousness. Where does your consciousness reside? It's localized in the sense that you are holding on to the delusion that your consciousness is contained within your body. And even worse, the delusion that it's in your brain. And even worse, that there's some point in your brain that's the ego and it watches everything else. It's just not localized like that. But we have the sense, which is the ego, that it is localized. And gradually the practice of yoga is to break that sense of localization to the realization that our consciousness is everywhere, not only throughout the universe, but beyond it. And then, but that realization has a point at which it starts. So if you think of a line, you're located along that line and you travel here to there. But if you think of a balloon, any point on the surface of that balloon is kind of equidistant from other points. And so that doesn't explain very well. So that's the wrong image. But what Master said was, I realized that the whole universe started with a point of intuitive perception in the human heart, in my heart. And the whole universe, but every heart was the center of the universe. So it's localized and non-localized at the same time. It's a hard concept because we're not used to thinking that way.
I'm just looking up at the wonderful quotes from Master's poem, Samadhi, and this would be good for you to work with, David. Thou art I am thou, but this part, knowing, knower, known as one. That's consciousness. That which is known, he or she who is knowing, and the process of knowing. So it's all three, and you experience that part of yourself in meditation. That's really it's when the mind gets calm, and the breath gets still, and the restlessness begins to diminish, that you just feel, you experience that part of yourself which we are always aware of. Every moment of every incarnation, we are aware of that, but it's masked. It's masked. Like we all are masked now.
The real problem with localization is that then there's the tendency to say this is consciousness and that isn't.
Yeah.
And so by localizing we limit, whereas our consciousness is basically everywhere. But anyway, if you solve that one, then you're self-realized.
So we'll see you next year,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
we want a progress report.
Yeah, and if you ask the same question, we'll give the same muddled answer.
And then finally, you won't have to ask anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, Shanti's popped up, and she's saying, time to close. So bless you all, and thank you. Thank you for the wonderful questions, and I hope everyone got to ask what they wanted.